Great to kick this off. Hi, everybody. My name is Ben
Hi.
Cutler. I am one of the co-hosts here at Match Data Pro, or I'm sorry, co-founder at Match Data Pro, co-host of the event today. I'm going to kick things off. Great to see everybody. Would love to see some comments along the way here. Again, I'm going to kick off the event today. The topic of the event today is should leaders invest more in data maturity? So, are organizations around the world doing enough when it comes to data maturity? So, again, my name is Ben Cutler, co founder at Match Data Pro, head of sales. That's the topic for today. My co host, Angeline, super happy to have you here and doing this with me today. Really appreciate that. We've got an awesome panel of speakers today. Most of these people I have kind of a personal relationship with. Samir, Tristan, Shireen, Henrik, Bill, Jeff, Scott, Nathan. Really appreciate you guys doing this today. I hope this is going to be an amazing event. We've got, I think, 280 plus registered for the event today. We're going to try to keep our eyes on the comments as those come in. Please like, share, comment on the event. We would really appreciate that. So today's event, should leaders invest more in data maturity? This is something I feel pretty passionate about. We see a lot of talk that, data quality is the problem or master data management is the problem, right? Or, whatever it is. But, in my career, 10 years, I've met with small, medium, and large organizations in all different industries all over the world, in all different lines of business. And it really seems apparent that most organizations are really just not putting enough into it, right? So that's the reason for the discussion today. I think it's safe to say nobody's cracked data quality. I think if we look at master data management and data governance, these disciplines are still very much in their infancy, right? And so we've brought together a panel today, a really elite, amazing panel of people across data strategy, data science, data analysis, data quality, data governance, master data management, you name it. And I'm really excited about this discussion. So, Shireen, I'm going to go ahead and pass it over to you. You can tell us a little bit more about the definition of data maturity, the structure of the event, introduce yourself, and again, big thanks for everybody having everybody on today.
Should I take that over for you, Shireen?
I'm
Yes,
sorry,
I hope so.
Angeline,
I wasn't
please.
prepared.
Let's start with a joke, right?
Okay.
Let's start with a few
Nice
laughs.
Need a
icebreaker.
little
No.
Please.
disambiguation here
Yeah.
of
Yeah,
identity.
yeah. That's what it is.
Yeah, so I'm going to set the stage by defining what exactly we're talking about increasing investments in. Oh, that was really perfect timing. That's not my phone. What to increase the investments in? I'm sorry.
I have a few slides for filler if you want. I can jump right in there,
we're
no problem.
we're gonna give her a second, and I'll take over and jump in if I need to. But hey,
Oh, there
no
she's
problem,
back.
Angeline.
Yay,
Welcome back.
it's real time.
We'll keep it moving. Angeline, we can't hear you. It looks like you're on mute.
So sorry about that. I'm usually in rooms by myself. So no matter how the discussion continues, at least we all agree on how to define data maturity. It's the ability to understand, manage, and improve upon your organization's operations and outcomes via data maturity. So every interaction within an organization creates some form of data, and most processes rely on it to function effectively. So even basic data like accounting invoices, sales figures are valuable. Organizations with higher data maturity can obviously harness it much better. It's about the ability to transform the data into actionable insights, and it's an ongoing process that requires investment in talent, infrastructure, and fostering a data-driven organization. So what we're going to do now, after setting that stage, we all agree on that, is we're going to go through one by one around the panel, and with each one will give their view, a short introduction of themselves. You don't need us for that. And then we'll go into a round table where we talk and hopefully disagree and discuss on the topics. So we do have one panelist who has a fear of not public speaking. So we'll start with that one. Please, Scott, go ahead.
Thank you, everybody. Good to see you. Yes, I'm Scott Taylor, the Data Whisperer. Spoiler alert, I don't do a whole lot of whispering. I'm out there yelling, telling, and selling about the power and value of proper data management. And with all this stuff with Gen AI and the rest of the craziness going on, it's only become more important and actually just keeps getting put kind of in the back of the room. You know, data management tends to be really clerical and bureaucratic and kind of doesn't have the sexiness of almost anything else in the technology space. But, you know, to answer your primary questions around this session, you know, should people continue to invest in data maturity? Absolutely. And are they doing enough? Absolutely not. And, you know, when you look at maturity, and I've seen kind of, you know, organizations looking at their data maturity, my view is that most enterprises are, in terms of data maturity, are in some form of adolescence in their attitude. It's like, you know, nothing fits, no one understands me, everything's a mess. And what I mean by that are things like, you know, everything's a mess because you don't have a common data structure. Nothing fits because you can't interoperate between systems. No one understands you because you don't have a common standardized vocabulary and nomenclature about the most important parts of your business. So we got to get people out of this adolescent phase. And my work really focuses on putting some form of business narrative together that helps data leaders get the investment, get the engagement, to get them, you know, out of being adolescent and being a full-grown, responsible adult in the data space.
I'm going to jump in. Scott, thank you so much for helping to tell that story. Thank you. I love it. Thank you. That was awesome. We're going to keep moving here. And again, just introductions, positions, stories, whatever you want to share. Jeff, my friend, you're up next if you want to go ahead and take stage here.
Great. Quick intro and then 2 pro tips. I'm the CEO of Senzing. I had a company called SRD. We built custom software, designed, coded, and deployed about 100 different systems. But one of the recurring themes was figuring out who's related to who. Is it 5 customers or is it really 1 customer with 5 transactions? I moved that company to Vegas, and one of the things we did is we built the software to help bring down the MIT card count team. So if you read the book, Bring Down the House, saw the movie 21, we had a little hand in that. More importantly, we invented something called NORA, non-obvious relationship awareness, to help the casinos figure out who's related to who. That grew up, sold that 5th generation to IBM. And at IBM, I said, hey, for $50 million, I can build a better one. We spun that out into Senzing. But that's why I was excited to be part of the conversation today, because this topic goes by a lot of names, but entity resolution is a rather common way to describe it, is who's who in data, and it's essential to data maturity. Now the 2 pro tips. At scale, at big data, there's too many possible matches for humans to fix. So you have to let the AI, the entity resolution AI, actually use more data to fix it, because there's not enough humans. Second, and this might catch you by surprise, is you have to let diversity in the data fester. If you have somebody that appears to have 3 date of births, you actually need to keep them all. Why would you need to keep them all? That's because clever, bad people don't use the same name, address, and phone number on every record. And if you can't remember the different ways people are describing themselves, you will never catch the bad actors. So you have to let bad data fester, and you want to accumulate variability. So anyway, thinking about data maturity this way makes systems smarter, and that's it's a must in one's investments. Over to Bill, I think, or back to you, Ben, or however you do this.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much, Jeff. I love it. Again, doing it at scale, right? And yeah, I've got a lot to add, but I won't. Bill, you're up next if you want to introduce yourself and share some of your insight with us, please.
Sure. Hi, everybody. So I work at Dell, where I am the customer AI and data innovation strategist, which basically means that I have this great job where I get to spend all my time working with customers, trying to figure out how do they build the cross-organizational alignment with respect to where and how they start their AI journeys. It's a great job. I wouldn't trade it for anything in the world. And the thing that I'm also nicknamed the Dean of Big Data. I teach at the university, I've written several books, blah, blah, blah. But what I see the challenge around these data management conversations is these conversations cannot happen in isolation of the business, right? If you don't bring the business into this process, you're doomed from day one. So whenever I engage with my customers, I like to look at it from 2 perspectives, kind of a pincher effect. Number one, let's start by understanding what's important to the organization, what are their key business initiatives, and what are the KPIs and metrics against which they're going to drive that success? What are their desired outcomes and how they're going to measure that? So at top down, right? So then I can figure out which data is most valuable, because not all data is of equal value. Which data elements are also most valuable, because how do I distinguish, signal from noise buried in the data? But you also need to create this bottom-up culture of empowerment, where you bring the stakeholders along this journey. You make sure that they're involved on day one. Ultimately, they're the ones who are going to be using these analytics, and adoption doesn't happen when you deliver the analytics to them. Adoption starts when you start designing them. And oh, by the way, these people sometimes, many times, have lots of great ideas as far as the features that are better variables of metrics of predicting future features and performance and analysis, right? They have better insights into what they want to do and what variables and metrics we want to start looking at. Anyway, thanks for the opportunity.
Thank you, Bill. Nathan, what do you have to say about this?
Well, anyone who's paying attention to LinkedIn yesterday knows I'm about to say something very controversial. So just a quick intro on me. I was at Tesla 5 years, operating in supply chain and manufacturing, and prior to Tesla as well. And I 2.5 years ago, I quit to start a consulting firm specifically around supply chain data and data analytics. So here's my controversial take. The answer is no. And but before I get stormed off of the call and before Ben boots me out, let me caveat that with narrowing in on a specific group of people. So I have a friend who owns a fabric store, and the way he runs his business is all cash based. He has floor to ceiling, no joke, like a 10,000 square foot warehouse of fabric. And whenever he needs something to sell, he just grabs something and sells it. And he has such incredibly high margins that he doesn't need to do anything else in his business. He's making so much money, it's laughable. And so but again, for most businesses, your margins aren't that high and aren't that clean, and so I definitely do recommend it from there. But I'll say it's a no for some businesses that are just too small or don't care, right? It's like you can run a very successful business just doing your thing, But that is the anomaly. That is a rare business owner. But there you go. That's my 2 cents. Appreciate everyone letting me drop some controversy.
Are you sure your friend doesn't have a data fabric?
Well, yeah, that is good.
Somebody had to say it.
Thank you, Scott. Thank you, Scott.
Sorry to interrupt. Yeah.
If you don't mind, actually, Edward asked a question on the chat. How do you get teams engaged and excited? To me, one of the things I do, not exactly relevant to the conversation, one of the things I do is I try and provide immediate value with even the unclean data. I try and do something to show them the possibilities. Be like, hey, here's what you can get. Now, if we spend a little bit more time, a little more money, whatever, we can do 10 times more things. But that's what I do, is try and provide immediate value and then worry about the long term after that.
Thank you, Nathan. That's interesting. I've never heard that before, that margins can be too high or they can be higher. I was in a financial institution for 15 years, so that's a new concept, but I guess that exists for some people. Henrik,
Yeah.
passing
Yeah.
on to you.
Thank you. So I've been blogging about data quality and master data management and data management in general for 15 years. I'm also doing consultancy for large companies, and here most of the data maturity investment is going into upgrading from generation 3 to generation 4 of a well-known ERP solution. Else I'm also running a service, or taking part in running a service for exchanging data between business partners, and in that sense, data maturity is also being about being able to share data outside the company boundaries. And here we also emphasize on the environmental and social impact of data besides the traditional monetary ones. So another aspect of data maturity is to serve multiple purposes for the same data. So here we have a quest for making data work for both traditional monetary purposes and for new environmental and social outcomes. So to the question, invest more? Yes. Invest smarter? Oh, yes.
Henrik, I love it, and you really opened up the scope of possibility that way, because it's not all analysis, it's not all, like the scope of the way that we use data is pretty significant. Thank you so much, appreciate it. Shireen, I think we're over to you if you want to introduce yourself and share.
Awesome. That sounds good. Although I think Nathan might have looked at my notes here. Gotta come up with something new. But I'm a data scientist by trade. My background is over 10 years of experience kind of in the Big Four consulting world. But more recently, I've branched off on my own, and I provide analytics data science solutions to mid-market manufacturing distribution companies, really trying to drive value in driving more operational efficiencies. I think that's a great way to kind of tackle that low-hanging fruit. So like my take on data maturity, do we need to invest more? Yes, for sure. I think everyone here, except Nathan, is pretty much saying that. And we, any company, small to large, has imperfect data. And I think sometimes that, or it's complex, or the same data fields mean different things in different tables. And that can sometimes seem like, okay, we don't even know where to start with this. And so I love to take the approach of like, where's the low-hanging fruit? What can we tackle? And when we tackle it, we walk through, because I provide analytics services, right? I'm coming from that perspective. How can I tackle an analytics project and bring you along the journey and show you all the different places where, there's opportunity to grow? And that I think helps see the value of like data maturity. Because like, well, can we do this? I'm like, we can do it to this extent, but then to do more, you got to do X, Y, and Z, right? And I think getting in and trying to catch some of those low-hanging fruit, even if it's something that just takes a couple of weeks to do, can really set the stage for, hey, this is a great way. And now I can see the value, because it's so hard to put value on like, what's the ROI of this? And it can be calculated 1,010 different ways. So that's, I guess, my very short take on it.
Yeah, ROI is always a big question. How do you calculate it, especially with data? It's often so long term you can't even. You have to have something, but how can you? So Tris, let's continue with you.
Sure. Hi, everybody. Tristan Burns, or Tris, whatever you like to go with. I've got about 15 years of cross-industry experience from oil and gas, investment banking, fast food and retail, and tech startups. So all of the highly reputable moral industries, of course. Most recently, though, I was global head of data and analytics at Pizza Hut in their digital business. And today I am a data leader, coach, and advisor. I'll be the first to admit I'm not a particularly technical data person. I sometimes can't hold my own in highly technical conversations. But for me, when it comes to data maturity, where I really see the value for a lot of organizations is focusing initially, at least, on the people and culture part of the equation. I think that a strong data culture needs to exist and come in before any kind of more advanced investments can be made in data and data tech and AI, for example. I think that companies love to dive into the tech challenge without thinking hard enough about how their tech will support the business outcomes that they're looking to drive. And I know Bill kind of touched on culture as well here, so I feel like I'm in good company. But this is something that I don't think companies focus on nearly enough. They love to kind of start the conversation either around data strategy or dive straight into technology, and then sometimes try to deploy technologies and see how those technologies might, what value they can extract from them. But I think what really needs to happen first is we need to address where are the deficiencies in our understanding of the purpose of data, how data aligns to the organization's strategies and the outcomes it's trying to achieve, and solve for those problems. And within that, I think you've got leadership attitudes, you've got data literacy, of course, you've got innovation, mindset, and all of those goodies.
That's awesome. Well, and Tris, like something you said there kind of stuck with me, and it kind of based on what Shireen said, is like a lot of organizations don't even know where to start, right? And it's like, if you don't even know where to start, you're not putting enough into this, right? It's like you can start small and prove out the value, right? But if the excuse is we don't really know where to start, come on, that's I can't buy that one. But Samir, so thank you, Tris. Samir, you're up, and I think you're going to have a very unique take on this question as well.
Thank you very much, Ben, and thanks for having me today. So great response. I just don't know how to follow all of those. But what I'll do is something that Scott said, which is a lot of people are not investing in data maturity. Well, I look at it in a slightly different way. Generally, most organizations, when they think about data maturity, it's through an assessment. Let's look at the quality of our data. But there's no real tie back to why, the purpose, the outcome of what they need. And I think, data management professionals have got to move away from thinking of data management as the area. What they've got to move to is thinking about, instead of being a cost center, we've got to be revenue drivers. And I think that's where our, businesses have to move to in terms of the thinking. That's what leaders care about in terms of results. So, I'm a data strategy. I've done data strategy for the last, 20 odd years. And I started DataZoom, about 12 and a half years ago now. So I've been at the level where I'm working with the C-suite. And they couldn't give a monkeys about data maturity. They couldn't care less, right? They want to know, what's the outcome? What am I going to get from it? Is it cost optimization or is it revenue? And are you going to bleed money from me or are you going to make me money? And I think that's the challenge that most data practitioners have got. And we are stuck in a rut because, again, something that many people have said, MDM, I think you might have said it, Ben, MDM and governance are in their infancy. No, they're not. They've been around for, hundreds of years, if I think about it. Do you know what I mean? No, I think we've got to step away from that whole idea of it's only about data maturity. I think we've got to quantify the impact and move ourselves into the frame of the business. Stop all of this stuff about, it's only about the data maturity and we've got to future-proof it and we've got to get it ready. No, use case-driven mentality with value-driven outcomes and think about decisioning. That's all I'll say for now. Thank you.
Beautiful.
Love it. Thank you.
No, so I think that closed out all the introductions. It was really nice from everyone. I think we generally all agree there needs to be some investment. There needs to be something happen. So my question to all of you to start the discussion is why? So why do we have this problem? Where's the disconnect? Samir, you said leaders don't care about data maturity. The question is whether they should, because in my experience, if they don't, then they're not going to force their people to care about it. So I just want to throw that out there. In your experience, where's the disconnect between the need to invest and things actually happening? As you said, Scott, it's in its infancy. So why?
I didn't say it's in infancy, but I'll jump in here. I agree with Samir in terms of this wording, this terminology we use. So data maturity, data quality, data literacy, data driven. These all sound like really nice things, but they don't really drive action on the business side. And they tend to be rather emotional in some cases. Data quality is completely subjective in a lot of cases. And you're mentioning why. I never met a CEO or a CFO, frankly, who's going to give you the money to do this data work, who cares about how we're going to get it done until they understand why it is important. And we struggle in this bubble in the data space of loving to talk about how we get it done and finding the latest, greatest new terminology. Or, is it data enablement? Is it data this? Is it data? You know what? Everything you do in data needs to enable and reinforce the strategic intentions of your enterprise. And as data leaders, you got to understand why your company is in business and then show why data is going to help you get there. And the other point I just want to make, regarding Nathan's anecdote, your buddy, your one-man buddy in the Schmata business who has everything, all his data in his head. That's a lovely anecdote, and I think that's relevant to smaller businesses. But if you get to the enterprise level,
oh yeah,
that's where the stakes really start. And dealing at that enterprise level is where a lot of my focus is. And if you're an enterprise, you got enterprise data problems, and you got to fix it.
And if you don't mind, I'll tackle that with apologize if I say this wrong, Zlatko, where senior management doesn't really know how to improve data or processes, so they enforce Excel sheets. But what they don't realize is that is data in an unstructured way. It's like they're enforcing data in very poor ways through outside of the processes, right? So I appreciate Lacko for the comment, and Scott agreed. If he ever opened up more things, right? It's like there's no way to survive in today's business world, if you go beyond a certain threshold of size.
Something Scott mentioned just in his response a second ago was about how we're really bad at drawing that connection between the data that we have and the technology we have and the strategic outcomes or the business justifications for why we would do something. I would love to get an idea from some people. Why are we so bad at this? Why do we, as data people, data leaders in industries, suck at this so much?
We're terrible storytellers in general.
I think Scott, you're right. I'll just tell you a quick story, and then I'll shut up. In 2002, I fell into data. Right, I was working with a fantastic turnaround CEO. We had an address problem. Our catalogs were returning. We weren't getting the revenue that we were expecting. Sales weren't happening. And the CEO said to me, "Listen, I want you to tackle this problem." I went off, spoke to a whole bunch of people. They came back and said, "Look, it's all about the data." I put a great presentation together. And there was me thinking, "Oh, it's all about the data." I put this presentation together. I said, "We've got to clean up all these things. It's going to take this long and it's going to cost you that much." And my head was purely in that zone. I went to see him with it, and he looked at it. He said, "That's really great, but I don't give I'm going to say again, I don't give a monkey's. What is going to happen if I do this?" And I looked at him. I said, "Well, I told you, you're going to, clean up your addresses." No. How much money am I going to generate from those sales? And then I thought, oh my God. So listen, from then on, from 2002, that's what I've been doing consistently. I have not seen that when I've walked into, a company, and when I've spoken to the data leaders or when I've spoken to the data teams, I haven't seen that happen. There are some, I'm not saying everywhere, there are some that, are slightly better at it, but it's this whole thing about, well, we can't attach ROI to anything because it just doesn't work. That's hogwash. There are many ways to do it, okay? And you have to put your neck on the line in order to put your foot forward to do it. So I don't agree with all of that stuff about, no, we can't do it. We're just stuck in tech. I think that's the problem. And I'm going to be quiet now and put myself on mute.
I think one of the simplest whys, it's most general, is better data gets you to better decisions. You still need to translate that to what are the dollars in revenue growth or cost takeout or whatever. But to the other question about what have people been failing at, I don't think people are spending enough time fixing data on its arrival in and when it lands. The secondary order effects of bad data showing up at the front door because they just onboarded a duplicate customer, and now it's just replicating through all the systems, and all these different departments are now struggling with it. If you added all that cost up, I think it's a severe problem, is data arriving at the front door without enough care.
Yeah, and that sometimes comes down to silo thinking, doesn't it? Because silo thinking is what ruins many things. That we are thinking about sales in one cube, we are thinking about purchasing in one cube, we are thinking about sustainability in one cube, and so on. And the world is complex, and it's also complex to do these ROI calculations because of this silo thinking, because you get a lot of different results, and how can you compose them together to say something about the bottom line or where we are getting at.
Yeah, and two things I would add on what Samir was saying too about it is so hard, right, on this ROI, and we just don't like doing it. I think there's two things. One, as data people, we like to rely solely on data. But to make an ROI calculation, you have to be willing to make some assumptions, some risks, and be able to communicate what that is. And that's where it gets really complex. And one thing I remember one team I worked on once, what they did was every time that we had a data analytics team, there was like a strategy MBA person on that project, and their job was calculate that ROI because they didn't trust the data scientists to do so. And so like one thing I've learned is like, if you're going to make a value for yourself as a data person, you have to learn how to do that. And you have to learn, how do we make those assumptions risks and communicate them where leadership is on board and they understand that, right? And because I think we all think, well, if it's just an assumption, they're just going to say it's bogus, but there's ways to make educated assumptions.
I'm just going to say one thing. I think you're absolutely right, Shireen. I think the educated assumptions is true. What we need to do is, where it's been the most effective and where we've done ROI, gone into a customer, put their strategy together, spoken to, got a ton of use cases, started to map that against value. But what we do is typically work with the finance team. There's got to be one person in the finance team who's worried about this stuff. And we work with them to think about what calculations they're using, right? So we don't need to do this on our own. The finance people know what they're doing. They know how to think about that particular way of understanding and expressing, what the CEO wants to see, or, the C-suite. So I think that's important. I'm going to let Bill go because I love what he's just.
Yeah. So I think the reason why we're irrelevant to the business is we continue to talk about technology, data, even ROI, when in reality, this is an economics conversation. It's a really fact, right? It's not about ROI, it's about economics. It's not about financial measures. In a world of AI, we need to make certain that we are building models that deliver more meaningful, relevant, responsible, and ethical outcomes. How do your models impact diversity? How do they impact environmental? How do they impact in community? Yeah, they got to drive value, but the problem with a financial focus is those tend to be lagging indicators. And in a world of AI, it doesn't do a great job of optimizing around things that have already happened. We need to embrace a broader economic perspective. And I think the reason why we've struggled when we talk to business stakeholders is they don't care about technology. They care about creating value through customer engagement and products and services and operational. They care about value. So that's why I think over the past few years, as Samir well knows, is I found I've transitioned from being a data scientist to a data economist. Because most of the customers I talk to could give a holy hoot about data science. They're concerned about economics and how do we create sustainable, long-term, cultural, economic value.
I just love the words we're throwing out. Give a monkeys, give a holy hoot. This is
I'm tracking all these euphemisms.
You got it. You got it, Scott. Appreciate that.
Yeah. I don't give a shit about it. Oops, sorry.
Oops.
There we go. Got banned off the LinkedIn. We're talking about ROI, and I've always kind of not dodged the ROI question, but my belief is kind of take it up a couple of notches and just go. I believe the business case for data management is the very business you are in. And when you think about why businesses exist, which is to deliver value to their relationships through their brands at some form of scale, you cannot do that without the kind of structural, disambiguated, strong, well-governed master data, reference data, metadata that's always in that foundation. I mean, what's the ROI of cleaning your product data? Well, if we all remember when COVID happened and everybody rushed into e-commerce and then realized their product data sucked, where was that ROI? Well, it's infrastructure, it's building those foundations. I know that stuff starts to sound a little bit too kind of, high and mighty to a certain degree, but it's the job of the data leader to show those connections, because your leaders, your business leaders, they're not going to talk about MDM, they're not talking about data quality and data maturity, but they are going to talk about customers, and they are going to talk about brands, and they are going to talk about delivering value at scale. And those are the conversations you need to be in to show them, look, our customer data is terrible. Our brand data and product data isn't aligned. There's no standard. We can't do those are the kinds of dialogues that I help people get in to show that, what I call is telling somebody their baby's ugly. You got to show that mess of garbage in that somebody has to have them realize this is what's clogging up the system. But businesses cannot exist without the kind of thing that we're talking about.
Scott, I love the word infrastructure you used. One of the analogies I've thrown out there a few times is, imagine trying to get to New York City without an airport. It's like it's not possible to travel into, it's like, or the interstate system, right? And so it's like data is similar in that you build it once and you maintain it, but that it enables so many other things, right? The other thing I want to, shoot, I lost my train of thought. But yes, thank you, Scott.
Don't worry.
So if I can continue.
Go ahead,
with
Angeline.
This,
go ahead.
Because in my experience, the problem is competition from other investment projects, and that really a lot of what you all are saying is leading in that direction. That data leaders need to be able to beat the competition. Yeah. So I just want to know your thoughts on that. How can data leaders really beat the competition, considering that? Yeah. No need to hold your hand up. Go ahead.
Okay, I don't know. I keep jumping in here, but part of it is telling a story, being able to capture the imagination of the folks who are financing this stuff. And you're right; they're going against better storytellers in their organization. For me, a big piece of it is the soft skills that data leaders have. If you're fighting for funds versus marketing knows how to tell a story. If you're fighting for funds against sales, if sales can't tell a story, they don't make quota. So these people are professional storytellers, and data folks tend not to be because they come up from the hard skills part of the organization, and you've got to be able to put that story together. And I think we have a better story than all of them, because unlike sales and unlike marketing and unlike finance and operations and legal, data has horizontal value across all those vertical silos in an organization. And we can bring value to every part of the organization. And if you've got the right kind of master data, you can actually do it all with the same data.
So this is exactly. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Can I build on what Scott just said? They're not our competition.
Yeah.
We can supercharge them, right? We're a partner for sales and marketing, procurement, and logistics. They can't do their job as effectively without us. So don't look at them as competition. Let's change the mindset. Let's say we're here to be the force multiplier to make certain that what you're doing is even more effective. We're here to help you do more with less by focusing on those activities that have high value, identifying those activities that have low value. So I don't see it as competition. It's an end mentality thing. John Morrill, if you're online, you'll appreciate this. And it's this and that. You need marketing and us.
Love that.
I agree with you. And I think, one of the things is, I think just going back to what Scott said and what Bill said, is the other thing is, let's forget about, the language of data. Let's think about the language of business, right? We have to come from a place where we are not, bringing technical jargon into the conversation continuously. So, I'm with you about actually working with those leaders in those areas, because we know we can augment, we can help them, we can support them generate whatever their business objectives are and their priorities, and we can align with that so easily. And it's not, and then therefore, we probably have all the tools. We don't need to go out and buy more stuff, right? We can do it very easily. And this is the other challenge. It's not about the tech. It's not about going and buying the new shiny toy. It's about really stepping into the shoes of those different operational teams, or the marketing teams, or the sales teams, or the finance teams, etc. And I think we talk about collaboration. It's hugely undervalued in many places that I've walked into. And back to something that Nathan said, we've been doing this for a long time. Businesses are still making money. So if you can't demonstrate it, then they won't simply, one, they'll be cynical because you haven't demonstrated it, and two, they'll just brush you aside. So I'm going to stop there.
I think there's a whole ton that we can learn from those other departments that we kind of was mentioned as being competitors of ours. First of all, they need us, right? Like we said that. So when I'm coaching new data leaders within organizations, their first 30, 60, 90-day plan is to go and spend time with those people, discover what their problems are, and become that force multiplier, and see how data and analytics can support them and drive forward the challenges that they have, rather than always being in this reactive position where we're constantly overburdened with all of the requests and everything that's coming our way, because we simply don't know how to support those functions. We're also in the position of constantly letting our work do the talking for us, rather than learning how to talk about it and tell those stories to those people. There's a lot we can learn from the other organizations within the business in that regard.
I remember the story I was going to share. I got it back. So when I was at Tesla, there was a time, and I had set this up for 3 years. There was a time when I could move literally millions of dollars of business from suppliers with the click of a button. And it was super powerful because when you go into a negotiation, you're like, hey, I can change your business at any time, right? It's like, I need discounts from you, or I need this, or I need that, right? And we had our data super structured, like really well. We were super mature, and it took a while to get there, but totally worth it.
Thank you so much. So I want to continue with another in a slightly different direction. So we're saying basically we need to invest in data. This is great. The storytelling is so important, and we're not in competition. I won't use that word anymore. So the question is, how do we know which data? Because data isn't data, as we said at the beginning. How do we know where to put the money? You also said something similar, Bill. So where do we start? We can also get stuck with that because the data also competes against itself. So
Yeah.
think about
So
that.
since you threw my name out in vain, thank you very much. You can't determine the value of your data in isolation of the business, right? I had a customer who said that to me once. I wish I had said that. A really great line, right? Which means our job as data leaders is to make sure we understand what the organization is trying to accomplish. What are their key business initiatives or business challenges or opportunities over the next 12 to 16 months? And make sure that we are that force multiplier. I love that term, right? We are the full force multiplier to help the organization achieve that. So by understanding what they're trying to do, we can quickly figure out what data they need and what data they don't need. And even better, we can figure out what data elements are probably most likely important to them and which ones aren't. So we can get very granular in understanding what data and data elements are most important to them given what they're trying to achieve.
I have a funny story on this. Oh, okay. I'll take it.
No, go ahead, Jeff.
You know, I call it fantasy analytics. The number of organizations I've talked to over the years, and I go, what are your goals? And they go, we want to do blank. And I go, okay, what data do you have? And they go, we got A and B and C. And I'm like, not even a divine being could use A, B, and C. You will never solve that problem with that data set. And the reality is a lot of organizations have underestimated how they need to widen their observation space. And that really starts with the business case, but too many times their imagination exceeds what that data will do. So you fix that with widening that observation space.
I'm going to jump in, talking about where to start. Again, customers, relationships, brands, products. These are the most important parts of your business. You don't have customers, you don't have a business. So how's the data about your customers? Is it any good? Do you have duplicates? Do you lack hierarchy? Do you have, is your biggest category other? Or other? That's another good one. I had one client I worked with. They had a category called DK, and we asked them what that meant. They said, don't know. So it's some other form of other. These things, again, which are sort of slightly boring, but those are the foundational building blocks of what all the other data is going to be used for. I have a thing I call the 4 C's: code, company, category, and country. And if you have a unique identifier, you got a common hierarchy, you got standard classifications of some sort, and then you've got geographies that everybody understands, there's all kinds of data problems go away. And, for me, nobody's ever going to get me off the high horse of you got to start with that foundational basic stuff. And the domains are customers, relationships, brands, and products.
I think for me, we've been going around that for a long time, and people still have the same old problem. So I think we have to start from the top of the pyramid. We have to start with the decision. I often say that without knowing how we're going to drive a decision, and we don't know what kind of data, then we don't know what kind of data we're going to use. So I think if we came from a decision point perspective, and we then go off and understand that use case, and then go off and build and find the data. And start to say and measure and understand and learn, and then say, are we making the right decision or not? Is it the right data? Incremental. Somebody talked about incremental gain, and we can literally start iterating very quickly. The thing about that is, I've walked into many businesses where they said, we've got all the data. It's in the data lake or the warehouse, right? But we don't know what to do with it. Well, why did you put it in there? You're just collecting data for no reason. So think about the decisions you want to make. Think about the actions you want to take, and then go off and run and get the data. because putting the data in and just hoping something will happen is what most people do. So decision, action, outcome first, and then let's go and, try and find that, whether it's external or internal. It doesn't matter. So I think, we could go around the world talking about, standards and this and that. We still talk about data governance 25, 30 years later, and still, people are having challenges about that. So sorry, decision needs to come from a decision or an action.
And I would just jump in and say, okay, that decision, you're going to start way up there. You're going to end up at customer. You're going to end up at relationships. You're going to end up at brands and products. You're going to end, because that's what a company does.
Of course, but
so whichever way you start,
I'm iterating. I'm not trying to fix everything first, but because my business can't wait for that. So, most businesses can't wait for fixing for 2 years, right? Which is what it takes these days. So you've got to really be, thinking about how you can iterate quickly and grab that data. If you need to clean it or not, you just need to start somewhere. That's the problem. We live and we gaze at our navels for so long that nothing ever happens. So I just need to disagree on that point.
But data maturity is also about being able to make decisions and make decisions that doesn't require that you have to look into data for 3 months or half a year, but have data ready for doing decisions that you have to take tomorrow, if they are monetary-based decision or they are sustainability-based decision or the other kinds of decisions. So you have to mature your data so that they can drive these decisions in what we call it technically near real time or real time, but quickly.
If you want to get confidence in your decisions, it has a lot to do with how well your data is connected. It's putting information in context. Like the word context, better understanding something by taking into account the words around it. If you got the word bat, you have to look at the words around it. And back to that silos conversation, when you can see horizontally, and you can get real 360-degree views, that additional context allows you to make really higher quality business decisions, which I have a question back to y'all is, it does seem like there is this rise in knowledge graphs, which is really the story of connected data, visualizing connected data and analytics on connected data. Any comments from any of you on the apparent rise of this? Oh, good.
So maybe, can you maybe ask the question differently? Because I think this is...
well, the thing is,
everybody.
if you're trying to make higher quality business decisions, it's about what kind of data, what the width, the wideness of your observation space. It's combining data. When you combine data, you figure out which things are the same, which things are related, and it gives you more richness and understanding. When you understand that one of your customers might not be that valuable, but they're part of I'll use a Vegas example. This particular person isn't that valuable, but when you look at their entourage or who they're with as a network, it's incredibly valuable. You're not going to send them come get $2 off the buffet. They're part of this group that's with the whale. And so it's understanding information in context that downstream better decisions. And one of the techs that's been on the rise is knowledge graphs. It's about connected data. So I was just curious if anybody's bumping into that.
Yeah, connecting it in new ways. Again, you've got to make sure it's established in the foundational way. So your customer example, is that a unique customer? Is it a duplicate? Do you have the hierarchy right? Is the categorization right? Again, back to my 4 C's. That stuff, that's got to be there first.
Yeah, right. That's a start here.
Yeah, multiple,
Yeah.
And then the graph allows you to then get more about see connections that aren't necessarily as direct or hierarchical or categorical. They're more like, all right, inferences and based on behavior. But again, to start it, you got to start with the right stuff. People, we get into a place where, and business people think about that all the time. It's like they want a great meal, but they don't care about the ingredients. So that's impossible, right? You can't have a good meal unless you have good ingredients. Maybe you're not going to cook it yourself, so somebody else is, but they better have good ingredients.
So if I can just, I can point at Shireen and ask us your experience as a data scientist, because a lot of people watching are going to be data scientists. And data scientists tend to get, lots of people think they're going to do a lot of stuff maybe they shouldn't necessarily be doing. What are your views about this whole data graph, like the connections in data? Who should drive that?
So I think everything always comes back to, I think everyone's been saying it often here, right? Business, what are the decisions you are trying to come to? What can you do to make the experience better? Whether it's the customer experience, whether it's more efficient operations. And so I often say, right, there can be one master data set, but there are oftentimes you are going to manipulate that same data in multiple ways to answer different questions, right? And sometimes it can be tough, especially from a data scientist. You think you understand the problem. Someone told you to build this solution, and sometimes you're given what the analytical solution is, but you forget that, okay, but what outcome are they trying to drive with it? And then you build it. Somebody told me this is what they wanted. Well, that's not what they wanted. And I think part of our job as a data scientist is to be like, you're trying to solve this, and that's not going to answer your question. You actually need to build in a completely different way. And these are the pros and cons of like what, when we manipulate the data, what you're going to get and what you won't get. And I think a lot of people think, well, if I have this one thing, it's going to answer all 10 of my questions. Usually one thing's going to answer one specific question, and oftentimes we don't get granular enough. And so I think especially when we're building these connected data sets or these knowledge graphs, like we have to do it with whatever the exact purpose is in mind. And if someone becomes ready to invest, they're like, let's do it all. And it's like, no, you have to come with what is the highest priority, because there will be some stuff that you can build off of, but other things you will have to do in different ways to get an answer to a different question.
So is there something that we need to do to dig deeper with the business when they come to us with these kinds of questions? What would you suggest?
So I think one thing that I always do is, aside from saying, what are your priorities? Like, what are you going to do with this once you have it, right? And then once you have it, what are the questions you're going to ask after that? Because what happens a lot of times is like, I built this model or I built this dashboard, and they're like, okay, but now I want to see the details. The number of people I've talked to that they're like, I want a dashboard for this, and you build them the dashboard and they're like, actually, can you just send me like the table that feeds into this dashboard? All they want is the table. Okay, well, like that wasn't, so why are you using that table? That means I did something wrong. That means this dashboard is not answering your question, right? And I think we've said it earlier too, of we have to make sure that whoever is going to be using whatever analytical solution we build is along the entire journey and they understand the pros and cons. Because a lot of times we just assume they get it. Like, oh, if you want something comparing this year to prior year, it shouldn't be set up the same way as like I want row by row what my sales were last year. That's a completely different data structure you need for it.
I think a lot of data people
helping understand that. Sorry, I think helping them understand that and why that's difficult helps them understand the value.
I completely agree with you. I think a lot of data people will take whatever they've been asked to put together for the business, they'll create it, they'll deploy it, and then they'll be hands off from that point onwards, and they'll let the business do with that whatever they will. There's no end-to-end visibility over how that has resulted in any specific outcome for the business. We often don't get, either we don't ask or we don't get fed back that information. And I agree with you, we need to be involved end-to-end from the inception of the question or whatever the business problem is that's being requested of us, all the way through the hypothesis, what will this help to solve, and then ultimately what's going to be the business outcome that we've helped deliver here. We just don't do that enough.
I think those are great, really practical examples, both of you. For the, I think we're almost out of time. Ben, correct me if I'm wrong. We could sit here all day, actually listen to you all, depending on where you are, or all night, listening to you all talking. Very insightful. Thank you. I think there's a lot more to be said, so we're counting on Ben to continue some conversations going. So I'm just going to wrap it up. I want to personally thank you again, and everyone in the audience as well. And I'll just pass over to you, Ben, to close it out.
Really appreciate it. Again, this has been awesome. You know, you guys, thank you so much for showing up today. every single one of you, all of the speakers. Angeline, thank you so much for everything you've done. I'll say a few last words, and then we'll all say goodbye, that kind of thing, so we can wrap up on time here. My thoughts after hearing this conversation is, there are we've all expressed and we've all heard today a lot of different symptoms, a lot of different problems, a lot of different potential approaches to solve these problems. We've talked about, bad quantifying, ROI and cost and benefits, and starting small and kind of building value that way, and competing priorities at the budget level, siloed thinking, overburdened with data requests, in other words, becoming order takers instead of really kind of multiplier effects, which has been mentioned. A lot of the times the conversation gets boiled down to decision making, but like Scott brought up, at the end of the day, this is your customers, your products, your relationships, your brands. My last words here are just that, I think a lot of the time we're still, we don't have that position of authority. We're not at that table. We're still thinking very small instead of like big picture. And data is information. I don't know where the division between data and the business lies. Like where does your business start and end where data is not part of it, right? So those are my final thoughts here. I really think it comes to data maturity, right? It's like we've got to put more into it, but those are my final thoughts. I've really enjoyed this. Loved having you guys on today. Every single one of you, a big thank you. And a big thank you to everyone who joined us on LinkedIn or YouTube. If anyone has any interest in doing any, participating in future events, please feel free to reach out. But I think we can close it there today, unless anybody has any last thoughts, jokes, feel free. It's your show too.
No puppets are going to show up.
Awesome.
Thank you very much.
I have a brief cameo from the CDO, the Chief Dog Officer. Anybody looking for data puppet? Just Google data puppets. We don't have time to go through it. Just Google it. I'm the only thing that comes up, and you'll see the adventures of the CDO and the cat sultan from Meow Kinsey and a few other very relatable.
I'm still waiting
characters
for my
in the
episode.
data space.
I'm still
I know,
waiting
the
for my
cat sultan.
episode.
Samir is the voice of the cat sultan, so it's coming.
Good chat, everyone.
Thank you very much.
Everyone.
Bye.
Thanks, everybody. Have a great day.